The problem I have with the term misinformation, especially today, is that many of the things that we thought of as misinformation just a short while ago are now accepted as fact.
The fact that we have turned this into a story about being maskless.
Oh, we've got a good one today. Over the weekend, the trucker convoy reached the capital of Canada. There was some maskless hypocrisy at last night's NFL NFC championship game, and Joe Rogan addressed this Spotify controversy. Really great episode for you today. Start off the week, January 31st. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live, and Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually their name, Jobob.
Live from a dingy bunker completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. On today, it is January 31st, the year of our Lord 2022. We've got a great episode for you today. I'm going to start off with Joe Rogan addressing the Spotify quote-unquote controversy. And then we have a great guest to come comment on the maskless NFC championship game that featured not only the Governor King Gavin Newsom, Mr. Lockdown of California, and Eric Garcetti, the mayor of Los Angeles, London Breed, the mayor of San Francisco, all super masky people not wearing their mask in the most expensive game outside of a Super Bowl in NFL history. Wow. Rules for thee, not for me. The elite up in your face again today. But first, I want to start off with this. Check out this. So you've all heard of Joe Rogan, right? Biggest podcaster on the face of the universe, seriously, in the history of ever. Joe Rogan was like the first person to get into podcasting. Anyways, dude has pretty much everybody on his show, whether he agrees with them or not. And I think this is super important for all of us to be paying attention to this story. Whether or not you actually listen to Joe Rogan's podcast, you need to pay attention to what's happening because it's pretty indicative of what is going on around the country with this culture of free speech. Remember, politics is upstream from culture, downstream from culture. When the culture changes, the politics will change, and that's bad for everybody. But Joe Rogan is probably a free speech radicalist, I guess. Again, I don't agree with everything Joe Rogan says. He's pretty lefty on some of the things that he thinks especially in terms of like social stuff, which is fine. You're allowed to think that. But the internet and lefties specifically have come after his podcast over the last several weeks, saying he's spreading hateful misinformation. There's been massive calls for Spotify to take down his podcast. They have not yet, but he did release a video yesterday to address this issue. Look, if you're watching this already, click the little like button. It really helps us out. Click the little share button. I'm going to play this clip from Joe Rogan. It's a little bit long. It's part of like a 9-minute, 10-minute video that he put out yesterday. But there's a 2-minute clip that I feel like people should be listening to and watch because I think this is very important in terms of the culture war and the culture of free speech in the country. Listen to this.
The podcast has been accused of spreading dangerous misinformation, specifically about 2 episodes, a little bit about some other ones, but specifically about 2. One with Dr. Peter McCullough and one with Dr. Robert Malone. Dr. Peter McCullough is a cardiologist, and he is the most published physician in his field in history. Dr. Robert Malone owns 9 patents on the creation of mRNA vaccine technology and is at least partially responsible for the creation of the technology that led to mRNA vaccines. Both these people are very highly credentialed, very intelligent, very accomplished people, and they have an opinion that's different from the mainstream narrative. I wanted to hear what their opinion is. I had them on, and because of that, those episodes in particular, those episodes were labeled as being dangerous. They had dangerous misinformation in them.
So I want to pause it really quick. So that's the gist of it. He's had 2 people on specifically. Now, obviously, there's controversy around pretty much everything that he does because he's that big and he garners that much attention. But those were 2 doctors that are pretty accomplished in their field. And again, I'm not taking a stance here on whether or not those people are right. They're very, very interesting. But then he gets into the quote-unquote misinformation problem that we have. This idea of misinformation, I think, is going to be the biggest problem that we have going forward. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section what you think in terms of how we can get out of that from a culture war perspective. Then he goes on to talk about misinformation, and this is what I thought was really, really interesting from Joe Rogan. Listen to this, and then we'll discuss on the other side.
The problem I have with the term misinformation, especially today, is that many of the things that we thought of as misinformation just a short while ago are now accepted as fact. Like, for instance, 8 months ago, if you said, if you get vaccinated, you can still catch COVID and you can still spread COVID, you would be removed from social media. They would ban you from certain platforms. Now, that's accepted as fact. If you said, I don't think cloth masks work, you would be banned from social media. Now, that's openly and repeatedly stated on CNN. If you said, I think it's possible that COVID-19 came from a lab, you'd be banned from many social media platforms. Now, that's on the cover of Newsweek. All of those theories that at one point in time were banned were openly discussed by those two men that I had on my podcast that have been accused of dangerous misinformation. I do not know if they're right. I don't know, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I'm just a person who sits down and talks to people and has conversations with them.
So that's what I thought was the most interesting thing that Joe Rogan was bringing up. For months, people were saying, well, the natural immunity is better than the actual vaccine. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, the CDC agreed with that. Here's the thing about Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has people of all stripes on his podcast. He's had Ben Shapiro, he's had Bernie Sanders, and everybody in between when it comes to the political realm and political ideology. He's not afraid to talk to anyone. Here's the problem with what's going on with Joe Rogan's podcast. There are people out there that want to censor those ideas because they're misinformation. Here's what I would say to the people who want to censor it because of misinformation. If you have a better, more compelling argument, make it in a loud way and people will come to your side. If not, the reaction isn't trying to take out everybody who doesn't agree with you. That probably means your ideas are bad. If your ideas are good in a free speech culture, they will ultimately win the day. And therefore, you shouldn't be scared of somebody with dissenting opinions on a podcast hosted by a comedian. But this is the problem that we're going to be having for the foreseeable future. The culture war is upon us, and that war starts at the free speech level. Again, if you have a better, more compelling argument, make it in a concise and understandable way, and people will follow it. But if your argument really isn't all that good, that's when people start turning to places like Joe Rogan. And if you start censoring it and trying to take it down, that's when people are going to question your argument even more. Again, if you have a compelling argument and a compelling case, express it to the best of your ability. This whole thing is going to be really, really interesting. I know there's a lot of you watching. If you haven't already, click the little like button, click the little share button. I think this is probably the most important thing we're having to deal with. Look, you can talk about election integrity, you can talk about COVID policy, all of that sort of stuff. But in terms of the actual culture of the United States, remember, culture is upstream from policy. Once the culture changes, the policy changes after that. If we lose the culture of free speech, we have a much bigger issue on our hands. I want to get to this. So speaking of culture, do you live in California? Do you have any friends who live in California? It's been tough sledding for them the last couple years. Geez, I was going to say a couple months, but it's been a couple years since Governor King Gavin Newsom decided to put in some crazy rules regarding COVID. Governor King Gavin Newsom rightfully ignores silly rules. I thought this was great. I thought it was a pretty interesting headline because Governor King Gavin Newsom was seen at the NFC Championship game without a mask with Magic Johnson yesterday. So last night, we're going to set this up entirely, and I'm hoping we've got a guest on to come and comment on this in a couple of minutes. If we don't, that's fine. If the technical difficulties, all that stuff. But we really want to dig into the story because I feel like there's a lot of juicy tidbits. But before any of that, I got to tell you about this. What are gas prices like where you live? I would imagine they're through the roof. What's the price of bread? What's the price of milk? Inflation has gone rampant. Ronald Reagan had to deal with it. And he said that inflation is just as brutal as a violent criminal that attacks you in the street and takes away your savings, because that's what inflation does. Inflation is at a 40-year high and 7% over the last year. So you just lost 7% of the invisible tax the government put on you, because the United States government is doing everything it can to diminish the value of the US dollar. How can you protect yourself? Well, invest in gold. Gold, precious metals, pretty much gold in general has been able to hold value for the longest time since the beginning of time, really, and is the best way to hold your value and protect yourself against inflation. So you can get all of the information you need to know and with our friends at Birch Gold by texting JOBOB to 989898. That's JOBOB, Jobob, to 989898. And our friends at Birch Gold will send you a no risk, no obligation, no nothing kit with all of the information to roll over your IRA, your existing 401k into a gold-backed IRA. So do it today. Protect yourself, friend to a friend. Protect yourself against inflation with our friends at Birch Gold. Back to this. So back to King Governor Gavin Newsom. So I want to play this clip, this clip from a while ago. This is London Breed. So London Breed was also seen in this photo. Let me see if I can get that photo up right there. So that's London Breed in this corner. Yes, this corner right here. This is London Breed. She's the mayor of San Francisco and was caught maskless so many times over the last year that it was hilarious. So I wanted to bring up this clip from September of London Breed talking about her maskless escapades and maybe give some context into why she was also maskless with Magic Johnson and Eric Garcetti's super mask lockdown people at the Rams game last night. Watch this clip from just a couple short months ago, September of 2021.
I think it's sad that this is even a story. There was something that was really monumental that occurred, and that is Tony, the original members, the brothers, Raphael Sadiq and Dwayne Wiggins, who have not performed in public for, I believe, at least over 20 years. And the fact that that is getting lost here is very unfortunate. From my perspective, you know, I was there, I was eating and I was drinking and I was sitting with my friends, and everyone who came in there was vaccinated. So the fact that we have turned this into a story about being maskless, no, I'm not going to sip and put my mask on, sip and put my mask on, sip and put my mask on, eat and put my mask on.
So that is London Breed talking a couple months ago about being maskless at a Tony concert. Sorry, give me a second. I'm trying to get our guest on here to talk about this because I think it's going to be really funny and kind of interesting. So that's London Breed and Mayor Eric Garcetti, the mayors of San Francisco and mayors of Los Angeles. If you don't know anything about those, they are super lockdowny of all types. And that brings us to Governor King Gavin Newsom, who was maskless yesterday at an NFL event, like I've been saying, with Magic Johnson. Now, couple things to keep in mind. California, if you don't know this, I know this is a national audience. I know people are watching from everywhere, but you need to see what's going on in the state of California. But Governor King Gavin Newsom has issued a mask mandate for all indoor activity until February 15th, which, if I check the calendar, that's not yet. So the mask mandate is still in place, yet Governor King Gavin Newsom was seen maskless with Magic Johnson at a game yesterday. Here to comment on this is a Daily Caller alum and now host of her own show on One American News Network called In Focus. We have Miss Stephanie Hamill joining us today from, I believe, beautiful San Diego, correct?
That is correct. I'm in La Jolla, California, so San Diego area.
So you're behind enemy lines in California, like myself, with Governor King Gavin Newsom wreaking havoc on people's lives. So Stephanie, just your first reaction to seeing these photos. I'm going to bring it up for the viewers and give me some of your initial thoughts.
So I was scrolling through Twitter last night, and I don't think a lot of people caught on to what was going on here. And I saw that one picture that you just had up of Magic Johnson and Governor Gavin Newsom together. And I was like, that can't be real. I was like, that's probably just like a Photoshop or fake news. And I was like, okay, well, let me go to the source here. So I go to Magic Johnson's Instagram page. He posted it. And then I go over to Twitter and it gets even worse because it's not just Governor Gavin Newsom with Magic Johnson. He's standing next to the mayor of San Francisco, London Breed, and then also the mayor of LA, Eric Garcetti. And I mean, he posted it all out there. So you have to wonder, was this by design or was this an accident? Because he outed all of them. And so I started posting screenshots of this. I wanted to save it just in case he took it down today. But holy smokes. I mean, it is so frustrating because it does matter. And I posted this in my Twitter too. I said, somehow leftists will defend this. Watch. And then if you go through my Twitter feed, there's actually leftists defending this. And then they're trying to make me look like some sort of villain, or that I'm an idiot for calling them out for the hypocrisy. They say, oh, well, it's outdoors. It doesn't really count. Well, actually, that's a mega event. And get this, I went to the stadiums, their information on their COVID protocols, and they specifically asked for people to be masked the entire time, unless, of course, you're eating or drinking. So this whole argument that it was like outside, okay, whatever. But keep in mind, too, Magic Johnson, immunocompromised, last I checked. I mean, I'm not his doctor. Maybe things have changed. But out of everyone that should be wearing a mask around other people, probably him. I mean, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing, too, is I don't think that's outside. I don't think that concert, there's a dome over the thing. They were sitting in a suite, too. So they weren't like out in the public area. They were alone in a suite. So everything that I was looking at constitutes as indoors, which would fall under Governor King Gavin Newsom's mandate of, well, everybody indoors needs to wear a mask until the 15th. And not to mention, I don't know if you knew this because I had kind of lost track. Did you know that California is still under a state of emergency until March 31st of 2022? It'll be 2 years of a state of panic, state of emergency.
I didn't realize that it was until March 31st. I thought it was until February 15th, but you're probably not wrong. I'm sure you're right there on the March 31st stuff. I mean, they're just going to keep it going forever until people decide to stop playing along. And what really infuriates me, too, it's like, obviously the virus is real and people are getting sick, but these people who are implementing the mask mandates and telling us how to live our lives, they don't want to follow the rules themselves. So it makes you question how serious they are about actually combating the virus if they don't want to follow their own rules. And this isn't just a new thing. It's not that they're just tired of it, too. They've been doing this since the beginning. As you may remember, Governor Gavin Newsom caught at the French Laundry, one of the most expensive restaurants, when indoor dining was banned. He was in a side room, had the special table for himself. Nobody was social distancing. Also, that's one of the rules for the stadium here. They said you got a social distance. And also, too, people are vaccinated there. You had to have to be fully vaccinated to enter the game or show proof of a negative COVID card. So, I mean, it's interesting, again, to see the hypocrisy here, but it's nothing new. They've been doing it since the beginning. And also, too, Eric Garcetti and Gavin Newsom, do you remember when California was on total lockdown where you couldn't even go outside or step on the beaches? That was going on in my area. I actually had, when I saw these pictures, I felt very triggered. I had this flashback of a time where all the gyms were closed here, and I went down to the Mission Bay to work out with some like a workout group, and there was like 6 or 7 of us, and the park police came and broke up our workout group. The park police came and stopped us from working out outdoors. Keep in mind, one of the best things to combat COVID-19 is staying healthy and staying fit, right? Most of
No, there's no way. That's not true.
Yeah, no, I'm probably going to get censored for this. This whole video is going to get censored because I said that.
So I wanted to throw out a couple things and just get your thoughts on this. So if you're familiar with California politics, and again, I think a lot of people should be because it's one of the biggest laboratories of democracy in the country. If you're familiar with California politics, you know that Gavin Newsom's 100% running for president. That's his entire dream, his entire life goal. You brought up the French Laundry being one of the most expensive restaurants on the face of the earth. He also went to that massive wedding a couple months ago. And now this game was the most expensive NFL football game outside of a Super Bowl in NFL history, and he's now there. How do you think this quote-unquote elite status that Gavin Newsom continues to portray is going to affect his future political career?
Well, I don't think it's going to affect it at all. It seems like the Democrat voter is really out of touch with their, what is it called, limousine liberals. It's like they don't want to accept reality and facts. Just kind of like when I said, if I call them out on it, I'm going to get in trouble. They're going to say that I'm wrong, or they're going to somehow defend it. So they look the other way. As long as Gavin Newsom keeps singing the things that they want to hear, then they're fine with it. As for how he would do in a general election versus a primary, I mean, it just depends who else is running. But I mean, I guess he has all of the right characteristics and traits. I mean, this is what the Democrats love. They love hypocrites. They love these elitists who tell us how to live our lives when they don't want to do it themselves. And yeah, I mean, everything's getting more expensive. And I'm just wondering, like, the last time Gavin Newsom ever went to a grocery store or filled up his own gas tank, it's probably been a while, if I had to guess. I mean, we should reach out to his office and ask.
I'm sure there's a photo shoot that he did that to make him one with the people. But yeah, in real life, probably it's been a while. Last question I got for you, and you brought this up kind of at the beginning, and I kind of have this theory too. What are the chances you think Magic Johnson is just based AF here and decided to just go nuts on King Gavin Newsom, post a kind of condescending caption and say, hey, look at me, here's Governor Gavin Newsom ignoring all of these stupid laws that he put in place? Do you think that has anything to do with this? Because Magic Johnson plays nice with the Democrats in California, obviously because he has to, but also he is a very, very talented business person. So I can't imagine he likes all of the business shuts down. Do you think there was any sort of nefarious intent with Magic Johnson here against King Gavin?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. You know, I don't really know a ton about Magic Johnson's politics. I would imagine he's probably a leftist, but I haven't gone through his whole social media feed to see what he said about the past or who he's voted for. But I will say, if he was a friend of these people, the mayors, Governor Gavin Newsom, he probably would save those photos for another time or for a private album. But he literally put them all out on blast. Now, I'm wondering if Magic Johnson has somebody who's managing his social accounts who maybe like didn't connect the dots here, that there was probably a problem. But now if he did do this on purpose to put them on blast, that would be epic. That would be amazing because, you know, I'm sure you've seen it. There are leftists who are getting tired of this. Look at comedian Bill Maher. He's finally speaking out. He's like, I haven't had my production staff in building for almost 2 years now. This has gone on for too long. I'm tired of it. And again, all of the science is arbitrary, so nothing makes sense. So we can go shopping at the grocery store, but Bill Maher's production staff can't come to work. I mean, at some point, people have to wake up. And from 15 days to flatten the curve to 2 years plus later, a lot of people, including liberals, are getting sick of it.
Yeah, my theory is that I don't think Magic Johnson is that dumb. I have to believe he's smarter than that, and his PR people are smarter than that, and I feel like there was some sort of intent there to call King Gavin out for his mask hypocrisy. Well, Steph, hey, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. You can check out Stephanie's show on One American News Network, In Focus. When does it air?
We air at 6 p.m. Eastern time every single day, including today.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you there. Thanks so much for joining us, Steph.
Okay, thanks a lot. Great to see you.
Have a great one. So King Gavin Newsom again with the mask hypocrisy again. So you also saw London Breed there with Eric Garcetti. Those are the mayors of the two most locked down cities in America in terms of COVID. Also without masks. So there's that. Not really much else to say other than I applaud the governor for ignoring those stupid, silly rules that are in place in California. If you're not paying attention again, California has a mask mandate in all indoor places until February 15th, which by the calendar is 2 weeks from now. Also, they're still under a state of emergency until March 31st. So there's that. Governor King Gavin Newsom indoors, not wearing a mask with Magic Johnson. Also, again, I'm not entirely sure, but I can't imagine Magic Johnson is that dumb to post that without knowing the controversy that it would cause. I think, and I'm hoping maybe, that Magic Johnson is super based and was like, hey, this is dumb. I'm going to call Gavin out on his nonsense. We'll see how that goes. I want to get to this. Have you been following the trucker rally, the trucker convoy in Canada? The Freedom Convoy reached the capital of Canada on Saturday and started a weekend-long protest gathering, event, whatever you want to call it. The one thing you can't call it is a riot. We'll get into more of that in a second. But I wanted to play a couple clips from this because I think the footage from this thing is astounding. And you got to see what's going on in Canada with their new, vaccine policies that people are not happy about. But before we talk about that, Got to talk about inflation. It's not good. It's ruining your savings. If you have a savings account, you lost 7% last year. You've lost the most you've lost in 40 years. Reagan had to deal with inflation, and he said that inflation is just as brutal as a thief in the night that would mug you on the streets. And he's not wrong. Inflation is a hidden tax that the government uses to lessen their debt obligation. I swear we're going to go into that super in depth one of these days of how that actually works and why the government actually wants high inflation, but that doesn't help your savings. So what do? You invest in gold. And that doesn't necessarily mean getting a truck, backing it up, digging a hole in your backyard, burying the gold, although you can do that, and our friends at Birch Gold can help you do that. But it means maybe rolling your IRA or your existing 401k into a gold-backed IRA to protect your savings. You can learn how to do that by texting JOBOB to 989898, Jobob to 989898. Get a free, no obligation, no risk information kit that tells you everything you need to know about investing in gold and, more importantly, protecting your savings. Birch Gold is an A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. They've helped thousands of people protect their savings. They can help you today. Friend to a friend, text JOBOB to 989898, Jobob to 989898. Protect yourself against inflation today. Back to this. The Freedom Convoy reaches the capital of Canada, and it is astounding footage. It turned into a party. Jack Posobiec tweeted this last night. It looks like this was Saturday night, and people are just having a great time, it looks like. Check out some of this clip. I'll do some narration over the top of it because there's not really much going on, especially if you're listening. It kind of just looks like a bunch of people having fun. The one thing that I think you can't call this is a riot. But a lot of people just in the streets of Ottawa just protesting vaccine mandates, because guess what? They're not needed. There's fireworks. This looks like a great time. I wish I was there, but I'm not sure that I'd be able to cross the border into Canada. So there's that. Look at some of the overhead footage. If you're just listening to this on the podcast, there are thousands of people gathered in downtown Ottawa. You've got trucks blocking all of the intersections, which I think is going to have an effect on some of the businesses there in terms of getting the products that they need to supply the customers that they serve. But again, this is just, it's a peaceful protest. So I want to get back to this. So the one thing that you can't call what is going on in Ottawa right now is a riot. There have been no businesses burnt to the ground. There have been, I haven't seen any looting. And the reason why I say that I don't think so, because I obviously don't know, but the lefty mainstream media, I would imagine, is doing everything in their power to find footage of rowdy protesters making people feel upset. But again, I have not seen a single personal business burning to the ground in these protests. Therefore, you can't call it a riot. I don't know that anybody is calling it a riot, but this is how you protest. If you have a problem with something, this is how you handle it, it would appear. Also, on top of that, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, nowhere to be seen. Isn't anywhere. No one can find him. He's gone missing. He tweeted a couple days before the protest in the streets of Ottawa that he was exposed to COVID and would be taking some time away. I'm sure he's fine. He's younger-ish. I'm sure he has all 9 shots and is not at all at actual risk of dying of the thing. But he did say that he tested positive today in a statement earlier today. If you don't know what's going on, it's been dubbed the Freedom Convoy, and it's taking the country by storm. The movement was sparked by a vaccine mandate for truckers crossing the U.S.-Canada border implemented by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal government earlier this month. So all truckers going through the border had to have the shot or quarantine, which doesn't make any sense at all, according to the CDC. But they still instituted that policy. If you're vaccinated, you can still spread it. You can still contract it. You can still do all of the same things. Your outcome statistically is going to be better. I'll say that. I'm not an anti-vax person by any means, especially on this show, and especially if you're older. But it's completely unnecessary to mandate. And then also the punishment for not having the shot is completely irrelevant. Quarantining doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help the people around you. And it sure doesn't help your employer who's missing the shipment of rubber ducks and they can't stock their pool shelves. Their shelves in the pool supply company. It picked up steam and gathered support as it drove east. Many supporters already opposed to Mr. Trudeau and his politics have grown frustrated with pandemic measures as they see political overreach. Oh, you don't say. Social media and news footage show trucks and companion vehicles snaking along the highways, cheered on by people gathered on the roadside and overpasses, often waving Canadian flags and signs disparaging Mr. Trudeau. Oh no, not disparaging the Prime Minister, the dictator of Canada. So check this out. This is also pretty interesting. A GoFundMe campaign raised to date a whopping 7 million Canadian dollars, which is about 5 million US dollars, 4 million pounds, over 99,000 donors. Protesters plan to stay in downtown Ottawa near Parliament Hill for at least over the weekend, and their demands have grown from reversing the border mandate to ending all mandates nationwide. Now, if you remember, there are a bunch of countries that have jumped on board. Denmark, Ireland, the UK, a bunch of these countries that are way more, quote unquote, progressive than the United States or Canada that have like, all right, nationwide, anything is just done now. These mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, all that is done. We're going to live with this thing as opposed of in fear of it. And that's what people in Canada want. They want the end to the mandates because they don't make any sense, including to the WHO and pretty much every scientist or medical doctor that's being serious. The mandates just don't make sense. It doesn't protect anybody but you, which is fine. You're allowed to protect yourself, but it doesn't protect other people. You can still spread the stupid thing. And also, it's just not necessary. For 99.99999% of people, you're going to be fine if you catch this thing. But that's it. That's that whole story. They're going to be in Ottawa. I kind of hope they say, I saw an interview with the truck driver. I forget which news channel it was, but I think it was a Canadian local TV guy saying, I'm stocked. I've got my truck. I've got everything I need in the back of my truck. I'm ready to stay for weeks, which I think would be fantastic. Stay as long as you flippin' can. That would be unbelievable. But again, we'll see how that goes in Canada. We'll keep a close eye on it, and we'll bring it to you the rest of the week. I want to talk to Ukraine stuff, but we'll save that for tomorrow. Because it is really, really interesting. Joanne says, park outside of Trudeau's mansion. I don't think he's there. I think he fled Ottawa because he has the COVID. Not because he's scared or anything, because clearly everybody has been peaceful in any of these protests, at least so I've seen. Josh says, oh, Josh, I went to college with Josh. Hey, Joshua, hey, nice to see you. He says he's been waiting for his rubber ducks to get restocked. I know. Isn't it such a tragedy that the vaccine mandates and quarantine policy is keeping your rubber ducks off your shelves? Yeah, but what else is going on? Hey, Laura says, great show. So glad I came across this, fighting for freedom of fellow humans. Yep, that's what we're trying to do here. All ridiculous stuff going on constantly around the world, especially in the United States and Canada. So appreciate it, Laura. Thanks for tuning in. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be here tomorrow, but an hour earlier. So wherever you watch this, like 10 a.m. Eastern, 7-ish a.m. Pacific time. Not sure where you are. I got to catch a flight out to go do the TPUSA live show, which I enjoy doing, and do that tomorrow. So we'll be here a little bit early. You can catch the podcast, or you can rewatch on Facebook and YouTube at any point during the day if you miss any of the segments. Also, yeah, if you grab the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, if you haven't already, I would really appreciate a follow on any of the social media platforms. I've also realized some of these have changed. I've got to change these little chyrons here. Just type in JOBOB though, because that's going to get me pretty much everywhere. Getter, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. There's not many Jobobs out there, so I'd appreciate a follow on any of those. And if you do follow me already, you'll know that I get back to pretty much everyone on anything. So if you send me some stories, send me something interesting that's going on, I will probably get back to you. Maybe we'll even have it on the show. There's a bunch of different instances where we bring stories that people send me via social media and bring them on the show because they're interesting and actually impact people across the country. But that's going to do it for us today. We'll see you tomorrow. Yeah. Talk about Ukraine a little bit more. President Biden, I'm sure, is going to do something ridiculous that we'll be talking about, but we'll see you then. God bless America.